My name's Alex DeLucia, and I am here today with Brookfield Today and Beyond, brought to you by the Brookfield Republican Town Committee. Today, our Beyond, rather than being beyond in time, is beyond in physical scope. And we are hoping that people from across the community served by this charter network will join us in learning more about Rob Simmons, candidate for U.S. Senate. And I just want to direct people to two websites where they can get more information about Rob Simmons' campaign for U.S. Senate. They are www.joinrobsimmons.com. And of course, with any questions, you can send a request to www.brookfieldgop.com. That said, Rob, I thank you for joining me this evening.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's a real treat to be on the show.
Thank you. Rob, people from the eastern part of the state have gotten to know you well since you served as a U.S. Congressman for Connecticut's 2nd District from 2001 to 2007. What issues do you think it was that brought you to that position in the U.S. Congress so that people here in this part of the state begin to get to know you?
Well, first and foremost, my wife and I are both from Stonington, Connecticut, which is a coastal town, as you probably know. And for 10 years, I served in the Connecticut General Assembly prior to running for Congress. And during those 10 years, issues came up that concerned me that actually related to the federal government. Transportation issues, I-95 was getting congested. Amtrak was not providing the very best service that we could get through our part of the state. The fishing fleet in Stonington is the last large fishing fleet in the state of Connecticut, and they were really suffering from federal government regulation. And then, of course, there was the issue of Indian casinos, where Indian tribes were being recognized by the federal government. Each of these issues involved the federal government, not the state government, and yet as a state representative, I had to deal with them. So I decided to run for Congress after 10 years in the Connecticut House against a 20-year incumbent who traditionally had always outraised the Republicans. And some people said, well, you really don't have a chance at all. But, you know, I put together a good team. My wife and family supported me, in particular my daughter Jane worked on the campaign, and we put together a program with enough money to get our message out. And the interesting thing is that on election night, we won by 1,000 votes, which just goes to show that our democracy is alive and well, it works, and people do make choices for change. And I hope the people will make a similar choice for change next year when they consider their Senate seat here in the state of Connecticut, currently held by Senator Dodd.
Well, my wishes go along with yours there. In your short-term time in Congress there, you had the subbase in Groton threatened, and you worked together with Nancy Johnson in keeping it here in Connecticut. Why don't you talk a bit about how you made that happen?
Well, it was a terrible decision that we were hit with in 2005, where the Pentagon recommended closing the submarine base absolutely and completely. People have to understand that submarines are a part of our history and culture here in Connecticut. During the Revolutionary War, we actually created the first submarine, the Turtle, which operated against British forces in New York. The submarine base in Groton, New London, has been there for over 100 years. We developed the nuclear navy there with the Nautilus. So closing the base would really take the heart and soul out of our community. In addition, we had developed some of the very best designers and builders of submarines. So it was a center of excellence. And I felt that losing the base would really degrade our military capabilities. So this was a fight we had to win. And we put together a team of Republicans, Democrats, senators, representatives. Governor Rell was involved, Nancy Johnson, Chris Shays, civilians, military personnel, businessmen and women, retired admirals. We put together a team that presented to the Base Realignment and Closure Commission all of the reasons why closing this base would be a real disaster for our country. And you know what? We won. It was a great victory. It was a victory of the people of the community to pull together a team, and I love working as part of a team, pull together a team that took on the Pentagon, which was the biggest bureaucracy in the history of the world, and our team won. It was very exciting.
That is exciting. Why don't you talk a bit about the committee assignments you had as a congressman, because I think they say a lot about what's important to you.
Right. When I went to Congress in 2001, I was assigned to the Armed Services Committee because I have a very lengthy military career. But I also requested that committee because the state of Connecticut has a lot of defense contractors. We have Electric Boat with the submarines. We have Sikorsky and helicopters. We have Pratt Whitney and jet engines. And the list goes on. And these are high-quality jobs. These are good jobs. These are jobs that we want to keep here in the state of Connecticut. And I felt that with my military background, serving on the Armed Services Committee, I could be very helpful in making sure that we were procuring the very best equipment for our men and women in uniform, but also that procurement would take place here in Connecticut. I also served on the Transportation Committee for obvious reasons. I-95 goes through my hometown. All you have to do is drive I-95 to realize the road is overburdened. We need to improve it. We also need to improve rail transportation, and I was on the rail subcommittee. We need better rail transportation for commuters. We need good rail transportation into Danbury and Waterbury and the feeder line up to Springfield. I think that's really important. Shoreline East. And then finally, I was on the Veterans Affairs Committee because I am a veteran. And I felt strongly that our Congress needs to keep the promise to its veterans. And that's what I worked to ensure.
And tonight you were on I-84, and I understand that gave you some...
I nearly didn't make it here because of the traffic jams. I mean, it's ridiculous. We can do better.
I think you're right. Now, 2 weeks ago, the Quinnipiac poll had you leading Senator Dodd by a 49 to 38% margin. It was the widest margin of any of the potential Republican challengers. What issues, in broad terms, do you think it is that have led you to be in a position where you are challenging Senator Dodd at this time?
Well, first and foremost, Senator Dodd has been the chairman of the Banking and Housing Committee for the last several years. And no sooner did he take over as chairman of the committee at a time when the housing crisis was looming over us. He took over as the chairman of the committee and moved to Iowa with his family and ran for president. Now, I can't speak for the people in Brookfield in the western part of the state, but back home in Stonington, which is southeastern Connecticut, where Senator Dodd has lived for many years, that was a slap in the face that he moved to Iowa to run for president. And we thought that was irresponsible. Since that time, at a time when 40,000 Connecticut families are faced with foreclosure, we discover he has a sweetheart mortgage from Countrywide, which is a company that his committee oversees. That doesn't seem right. And when we've asked for him to show us the mortgage documents, he promised to release them, but we haven't seen them yet. Right. And then there's the cottage in Ireland and the AIG bonus legislation. And I think that the poll shows that people have lost confidence in Senator Dodd. They don't trust him anymore. Speaking for myself, I'm a military officer. I served for over 35 years in the U.S. Army. Went in as a private, retired as a colonel. But in the military, your word is your bond, and you treat your public office as a public trust. In fact, that's what I believe in my whole life of public service, that it's a public trust, that it's service above self, not self-service. And I think that Senator Dodd has forgotten that. Somewhere along the line he's lost his way, and that's beginning to show up in the polls.
I've often said my wife and I often differ on politics, but the one thing we agree on is when we find a candidate with integrity, that's who we like to see in office.
Well, I appreciate that.